Hey guys, this is the Fat Panda, and I am here with a quick rundown of the Week 3 power rankings for the WPF. Didn't have a lot of time this week, so I kind of threw something together. I won't have a lot to say about each team or each match, but I thought I'd at least do a little update after looking over the matches and give you guys something to go over at least this week. So hopping right into it. We have number 1 still at the top of the rankings, the Tennessee Red Gyarados, up to 3-0 on the season. Got to get out of division without dropping a single game, and also managed to get out of his division without having Melmetal do anything at all of relevance. But he's been carried pretty hard by Centiskorch with its G-Max, and also just how fat some of his team is. In Week 3 again, he managed to basically just outstall all the offense that the other team brought, and then managed to find an opportunity to set up. Actually, I don't even think he set up Centiskorch this time. I think he just G-maxed and attacked, but broke through the little bit of the core that the opponent had and managed to stall out the rest, and that's how he's won all 3 matches this year so far. So we'll see if this continues to be the case once we get out of the division, or if now that he's finally going against opponents they don't have to play him twice, maybe Melmetal will come up with a few more options to impress us, because so far it has not been the case. At number 2, I have the Melbourne Lucarios, also at 3-0. I believe we have one other 3-0 team so far, I do believe. But Melbourne has showed pretty darn strong play every match so far. This week in an absolute slugfest against the Bolton Boldores, where they basically just focused on hitting each other as hard as possible, and there wasn't really a lot of counterplay other than that. He did manage to come up with the more offensive team, with Scarf Passimian leading the way with 3 KOs for him this week. It's been very, very strong. I haven't checked to see if Minnesota or Tennessee come up against each other this season, but if they do, I really want to see that match, because both these teams are just going full steam. So I'm curious to see which one of them might falter first. At number 3, we still have the Minnesota Lycanrocs, up to 2-1 after a disappointing loss last week. This week he managed to come at us with a weakness policy Arcanine that definitely caught everyone, including his opponent, off guard. And even getting mementoed, the Arcanine was still able to sweep pretty much the entire team after the one real possible stopper in Colossal was taken down. So really, really good prep. Basically managed to call exactly what he needed to beat his opponent, and got it right, so he just crushed him. It was a good match to watch, at least from this side. At number 4, rapidly rising up in the ranks of the Farmland Farfetch'd, up to 3-0 as well. I really didn't think much about this team when I first saw it, and while I still don't necessarily think it's an amazing team, there's just been no stopping him when it comes to using the Toxapex and the Corviknight and a couple other members of the team to the max. He's just crushed his opponent week after week. This was the closest week, I believe. It was only a 1-0 victory, but it turns out when your opponent's lost 4 out of the 6 Mons, it's usually the case where there's nothing that can actually break through with Toxapex. And that's exactly what happened. All it took was Toxic, Recover, and Baneful Bunker, and the rest of the team fell. And I hope more. And I mean, it's not even a case of not even bringing things for Toxapex. The Toxapex this week stalled out a Heliolisk. So, I mean, if it's stalling out that, how much hope do other teams really have, you know? At number 5, we have the Warsaw Rapidash with an unfortunate loss this week. Didn't really have anything, it turned out, for a weakness policy agility Arcanine set. And I mean, it's hard to blame him, because how often are you going to ever see that kind of thing? He got caught by a once per season kind of tech, and it's kind of hard to really blame someone for that. Didn't make a trade this week though. Traded away his Drifblim into free agency and picked up Drampa. I think I really like Drifblim, but I think it's also incredibly underwhelming basically all of the time. So in that regard, I do like this pickup of Drampa much more. It's a good, solid, hit hard mon. The normal dragon typing is actually surprisingly decent, especially since it gets fire for steals. And you can't ever underestimate having either Berserk for attack boosts or Sap Sipper to try and get some momentum against grass types. So I think overall he came out ahead with this trade, and it's a team upgrade in the end. At number 6, we have the Boston Red Sox this week, managing to overcome Seattle's Sun team. And it was one heck of a weather war, even though it doesn't look like it would be, because Boston pulled out all the stops to try and prevent Sun from staying up as much as possible, including such things as Sandstorm Bronzong of all mons and Max Rockfall Duraludon. And while he managed to, and he really showed how I think a blueprint of taking down the Sun team is just disrupting that weather as much as possible. Because while it was very easy for Seattle to kind of preserve the Torkoal so it could bring Sun up, every time he brought that Torkoal out, it meant that one of his actual Sun abusers was going to be taking chunks, since he never could afford to sacrifice the Torkoal itself. And that really was what kind of undone. That's what Boston took advantage of, and managed to get rid of basically all the Sun abusers before the Sun itself was taken care of in the end. So it was very, very good prep, and I think it really laid a blueprint that teams are going to want to look at when they're coming up against Seattle in the future. Speaking of, at number 7, we have the Seattle Serperiors. Kind of like I just mentioned, he really focused so hard on keeping his Sun alive that all his Sun abusers fell before the Sun itself was actually gone. And Torkoal was, I believe, the last one standing, or the second last. I think Charizard was technically the last, but it had already kind of didn't really need the Sun anymore, so it was kind of a moot point. Venusaur had fallen, Darmanitan had fallen. Seattle is also making a trade with another coach. He is trading away his Frostlass to the Vegas Gold Magnemites in exchange for their Barbaracle. I don't really like this trade for Seattle. I'm not exactly sure what it gets them. I guess they can go Sunless now, but now they have 2 water types on their team, on a team that is just screaming Sun. It kind of gives them a stronger not water, or like a not Sun team style, I guess, but I don't really know. I think when you've devoted so many of your slots to making Sun as powerful as possible, picking up mons that actively are worse in it really just kind of confuses me. I mean, maybe he'll surprise me in the future, but I think Frostlass offered the team more utility, although I don't know if it had actually been brought yet to a match, but I guess we'll see. At number 8, I have the Vegas Golden Magnemites with another loss this week. He's kind of going through the season slump I feel like I see every single year, but with 2 championships under his belt, I can't really underestimate him. So, still not dropping too far in the power rankings. The team is still very strong. I know he's a really, really good coach. He's just, I guess, working through his team and trying to figure out what's best. But this week did lose to the Toronto Torterras. Technically, because he got hexed out at the end with a Spit F drop off an Earth Power and then a flinch off an Air Slash, and just a lot of bad luck coming at the very end. But I also feel like, if your entire match came down to one specific turn where you're hoping not to get flinched, then there were probably other things you could have done better in the first place. So, it's really, you got to look at those, and you can't dwell on the fact that the flinch happened or that the drop happened. You just got to look at the plays you made earlier that didn't put you where you wanted to be at the end. He's the other half of the trade here, trading away his Barbaracle for Frostlass. I think this side of the trade looks a heck of a lot better for Vegas Gold Magnemites than it does for the Seattle Serperiors. Frostlass adds a lot of utility that this team is lacking right now. It adds more hazards. I guess it's not really adding hazards because you're losing a Stealth Rocker with Barbaracle, but he's got Terrakion if he really wants rocks, and Frostlass adds spikes. It adds some really good support moves like Taunt and Thunder Wave and Destiny Bond. And it's also just really, really fast. I can't remember what the exact number is, but it's like 116 or 118 or something. It adds a lot of speed, and it's actually now, yeah, it's the fastest thing on his team. Whereas Barbarical, I mean, it's slow, but it's got Shell Smash. It just needs, a lot of support. And I think picking up the Frostlass instead makes his team quite a bit stronger overall. At number 9, another fast riser in the power rankings are the Atlanta Beedrills, showing off exactly why they traded for Grimmsnarl last week by letting it 6-0 the opponent with some absolutely crazy power swap shenanigans, power swapping away a Blastoise's Shell Smash, and then proceeding to sweep back with its stab moves and Drain Punch to heal. Certainly not what anyone expected. I can't think of the last time I saw the move Power Swap used in a way that was so efficient, but if it gets used so well here, you can't exactly say it's a bad move. It was really, really good prep, and it's actually really all we saw of the match too, because outside of his lead Claydol, which was Rapid Spin, Iron Defense, Body Press, also absolutely crazy. We didn't really get to see much of the team, but what we saw was very, very good prep for his opponent, so I'm really liking what Atlanta's brought the past couple weeks, and I think I even liked what he had the first week, but it was just a rough match overall. Oh, no, the first week was Togekiss Flinch World, or Ancient Power World, so ignore that. But 2 really, really good weeks, and that's why he's rising up here. I'm curious to see how far you can take this, because he's had some really, really good plays over the past couple weeks. Down to number 10, we have the Sacramento Kingler. I guess this is the team I've never been able to figure out how to place. I think I had him kind of low early, then I bumped him really, really high, and now all they've really done is lose. So it's kind of hard to keep them anywhere high in the rankings. He got counterswept by Power Swap Grimmsnarl. It's one of those things, kind of like earlier I was talking about Weakness Policy, Agility Arcanine. It's something that only is ever probably going to come once a season, and you're the one who got stuck trying to face it, and there's really no way to prep around that because most people are never even going to think about it. It's unfortunate for him, but he didn't really have any way to deal with a bulk up Grimmsnarl if he got so blown apart by a Grimmsnarl that swapped just +2 attack. So, I mean, in the end, I guess there was problems with prep to start with if Grimmsnarl was able to blow him apart so easily. At number 11, we have the Rochester Raboot. Managed to lose to Kronos' Zero Aura pretty handily this week, mostly due to the fact that he just lost his Hippowdon in like the first 2 or 3 turns of the match, and then he didn't really have anything else that could stop it. So Zero Aura was able to just run rampant. So, even if he had prepped for it a little bit better, if he's losing his things right away that can stop it, it just shows a lack of kind of game plan when you're actually in the match and you're seeing what you're up against. So if you can look at that and kind of see where went wrong during the battle, you can hopefully try and prevent similar things from happening in the future. At number 12, we have the Tampa Bay Toxtricity with another loss this week. Got caught up by a couple odd things. He manages to face a Totemize physical offense Toxtricity, which you could tell definitely caught him off guard in the match because he just didn't know how to respond, and he ended up losing his Dragapult for absolutely nothing when he could have sacrificed something like Skuntank probably and managed to keep his team a little stronger during the battle. But even then, depending on what that Dragapult set was, he really just had absolutely nothing that could stop or break Toxapex once a Helios had been toxic. Because then it was just on a timer and there was nothing he could do from that point on. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say bring more things for Toxapex when you brought Heliolisk and you might have had a Dragapult set that could handle it. But, Toxapex is just one of those Pokemon that are just almost impossible to really break, even when you have the ideal conditions. unless you have taunt plus attacks plus its last thing on the field so it can't regenerate, it's going to be hard to kill regardless. So it's kind of hard to fault him. At number 13, we have the GWS Galladiators, picking up their first victory this season on the back of Zeraora almost entirely. Managed to pull apart the entire team after the bottom was taken out. I think Araquanid's liquidation or something like that was what ended up doing it. And Zeraora picked up like 4 KOs this match. So really, really good prep. He basically just identified exactly what of the opposing team he needed to get rid of. He got rid of it. And then Zeraora went wild and just took out the rest of the entire match. At number 14, we have the Toronto Torterras, also picking up their first win of the season. Not terribly surprising. They've been showing great improvement every single week, and this was no exception. He managed to play pretty well and benefited a little bit from luck at the very end with a flinch, but like I said earlier, the entire game rarely comes down to, if you're saying it was just a flinch at the very end, that means there were probably problems before then that really kind of contributed to the problem, especially when it's like the last mon versus last mon scenario. There were probably ways to get around that. So, but overall, really good play. Wonderful debut by Rotom Fan, picking up 3 KOs and threatening to take over season MVP for Toronto themselves. And curious to see if he can just kind of keep getting better and better. If he's already picking up wins and he gets better every week, it's going to be a pretty good season in the end for him. At number 15, we have the Hekseville Honchkrows with another loss, unfortunately, but against the Tennessee Red Gyarados, it's kind of hard to pick up a win in the first place. But really, it was just 2 teams that were kind of fat, kind of teched out for each other, and in the end, it was just the Tennessee's team managed to outlast him and outlast the G-Max without getting any KOs, or maybe just one. He did bring a wonderful tech with Destiny Bond Gardevoir, though, which took the Melmetal out of the match almost instantly. So really, really good play there. But the team itself then wasn't able to break through the rest of the fat that Tennessee brought with the Rotom and the Xatu and the Jellicent and all that stuff. Number 16, we have the Bolton Boldores, who also dropped to 0-3 this season. Kind of got into an absolute slugfest against Melbourne, and they were just trying to match blows, and really it's just that team quality in the end came out with Melbourne on top. It's, when you kind of eschew trickery and just go for attack on attack and your opponent reciprocates in the exact same way, it usually comes down to team quality, and Melbourne's team is generally going to be considered stronger than Bolton's. So that kind of end was fairly predictable. But he did come very, very close, I believe. And I guess you really can't ask for much more than that. Here we have the recap for you guys with a pretty new updated season MVP tracker. Grimmsnarl taking the world by storm, getting a 6-0 on its first week in the league. Toxapex racking up kills over a couple battles now. I don't think it's actually fallen yet. And Scorch also steadily climbing, getting a net 1 or 2 KOs every single week is all it's really taken for it to keep climbing up the leaderboard. That's really all I got for you guys this week. I don't have a heck of a lot of time to go into any more depth. Hopefully I'll have some more time for you guys next week, and I will see you then.